Well, good evening everyone and welcome back. Tonight I wanted to do a quick video for you guys, and it's a follow-up to a video that I did last week. I did a video on CMHC's predictions, and it's a video that actually got quite a bit of traction, lots of engaging comments on it, so thank you for that. Since that time, CMHC has come out and now actually changed some of their rules around their mortgage insurance program that they offer to people. So if you're a first-time home buyer, I think this is particularly important for you to tune into, but if you're not and you're just interested in what is going on in the Canadian real estate market, or what the government is concerned about what's going to go on in the Canadian real estate market, then I recommend that you stay tuned. Well, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Cory. I'm a top producing realtor here in London, and through these videos I try and provide lots of value. So if you find some value here, leave a like, definitely leave a comment down below. It's always fun, like I said, to jump in and engage with people, so I always appreciate that. For those of you that don't know, CMHC is a Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation, and it's actually a Crown Corporation, so a corporation owned by the government. And what they do through CMHC, or part of what they do, is they offer lenders insurance on mortgages that are what they consider high ratio mortgages. So if you are somebody who can't afford to put more than 20% down on the purchase of a property, then you require mortgage insurance on that mortgage. So the minimum requirement is 5%, and that's what most first-time home buyers will put down, is a 5% down payment, and then they'll have to pay some CMHC fees as well on top of that. And that CMHC fee is an insurance fee that the lender requires you to get. Well, CMHC has now changed some of its stipulations on what that buyer is required to have, and those stipulations relate to basically debt service ratios, which I'll explain in a minute, and credit score as well. Originally, their standard was that somebody had to have a minimum of a 600 credit score. They've now jumped that up to 680. What does that actually mean? It just is kind of them moving that goalpost a little bit higher to show that somebody has a strong history of actually paying their debts back. So they're just making that a little bit tighter. The meat of their announcement actually came through their debt service ratios. So there's two different ratios that a lender looks at and CMHC looks at. One is called your gross debt service, and one is called your total debt service. Gross debt service includes the cost of your mortgage payment, the property taxes associated with that property, and the utilities associated with that property. They don't want those expenses to make up more than 39% of your gross annual income. They've now reduced that to 34%. Total debt service is taking all those same expenses plus any other debts that you have, whether it's student loans or car payments or credit card debt. They group them all together. They originally said that can't be more than 44% of your gross income. They've now reduced that down to 42%. They basically want to see Canadians carrying less of a debt load, and so you have to fit within inside of those ratios in order to get approved for a mortgage, or at least get approved for a mortgage with CMHC insurance on it. So how does that affect you? Well, if you put 5% down and you make about $60,000 a year, that could decrease your actual borrowing power or purchasing power by about 10%. So the big question is, what is their goal behind changing these numbers? And some of it I'm going to refer you back to the video that I shot last week, and you can go back and look at some of the methodology and thoughts and concerns that CMHC has about where the Canadian housing market is going. So I'm going to read a quote here from Evan Siddall on what he actually said, and this will give us a glimpse into what CMHC is thinking as it relates to some of these changes. These actions will protect home buyers, reduce government and taxpayer risk, and support the stability of housing markets while curtailing excessive demand and unsustainable house price growth. So I think there's a few things that you actually need to look at in that sentence. It says these actions will protect home buyers. So what home buyers will they protect? Well, they'll protect first-time home buyers, or at least they say that they will. What's the other part? They'll reduce government and taxpayer risk. And to be honest, I think this is the biggest part of it. If you look at CMHC, they carry the insurance for so many of those high ratio mortgages. With their predictions that they made about seeing a potential of housing prices drop, the unemployment numbers that we're facing in the midst of this pandemic, as well as just a stunted economy because it was basically shut down, they look down the road and say, wow, we could potentially see an increase in the number of people that are going to default and eventually foreclose on their property. So they're looking at it and saying, well, we need to protect the government and the taxpayers who are essentially writing the checks for this CMHC insurance. The other piece that it says, we'll support the stability of the housing market while curtailing excessive demand and unsustainable price growth. So one of the other efforts that evidently they're trying to make is to basically tamp down demand in the market. You've got this weird thing happening where they're making it harder to get approved, but then they're dropping interest rates and they're saying, well, we want to curtail demand. Well, lowering interest rates is certainly not a way to do that. You know, rule changes like this are going to impact first-time homebuyers who want to get into home ownership. But then at the same time, is it those first-time homebuyers that's driving demand? I would argue, at least in our market here in London and the surrounding community, it's folks like myself that are really driving demand. It's younger families where they are generally higher income earners than they were 10 years ago when they bought their first home. Not to mention that they've still got a lot of runway ahead of them as far as being able to pay off mortgages. So they're the ones that are actually pushing, you know, those $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 price point, which certainly isn't a first-time homebuyer price point. But what happens is it has this trickle-down effect where the buyers that can't operate in that price range, they move down to the next price range and they pursue heavily on that, and it just moves down and down and down, and that's why we've seen prices go up, and we've seen it actually affect everybody from here all the way down right to first-time home buyers. So if you want to curtail demand, you need to go after the people that are the ones that, like myself, I certainly have more than 20% of equity in that, so I don't have to worry about any of these CMHC rules. So I've got quite a bit of capital to go and invest in another property if I want and continue to push that demand along, providing that the people in my demographic are actually still gainfully employed. And that's something that's more important to look at for driving demand than trying to impair first-time home buyers. All that being said, the other thing that I will highlight, if you don't know, is that CMHC is not the only company that actually insures mortgages. It's the only Crown corporation, and it is the majority insurance holder here in Canada. But there's also two other companies. There's Genworth, which is what I more commonly know it as, but it's also MIC, which I think is Mortgage Insurance Company, is a short form for what it stands for. And there's Canada Guarantee. These are two private organizations that also insure mortgages, and they have come out in the last day and said that they have no intentions to adjust their lending practices or the criteria to meet to get a high ratio mortgage. So their criteria is less than what CMHC is, but I would keep that in mind. If you are a first-time home buyer that is looking, you need to know if your lender works with those two corporations to insure your mortgage. And this is where I would really make the plug for you. If you are not working with a mortgage broker, then you should be. I think if you just walk into your typical bank, they're not going to have all of these options for you the way that a mortgage broker would. At times like this where the goalposts are kind of changing, it seems like almost weekly, it's important to have a strong real estate team working behind you, all the way from your realtor to your lawyer to your mortgage broker and so on, to make sure that you can actually get the house that you want to and do so in a responsible way. So I know that this will only be relevant for probably a short window of time because the rules will change again. But if you found this helpful and you've watched this far, I'd love for you to hit the like button. I'd love for you to leave a comment down below of what you've thought. And of course, if there's any other updates that come out, I will be shooting another video for you as well. But other than that, I hope you are all doing well. Hopefully we will be able to see each other soon. But that's it for me, and I hope you all have a wonderful night.